Welcome, freelancers, to our Anthem show. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a crazy morning. We have shaper storms brewing in the open world and just scrambling a little bit behind the scenes to make sure that we have footage of it so that we can discuss it on the show. Joining me on the show today is Arekkz. Good to see you again, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
And Dantics is also back from Japan. I hope you had a good trip.
I did. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, of course. So on today's show, everybody, we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the Shaper Storm. Some people are saying something crazy is going to happen like right now, but we really hope it doesn't. What's going on right now, in case you're wondering, is there's a Shaper Storm brewing in the sky, and I'll just cut on over to that really quick and show you guys sort of what we're talking about. And what we're seeing in the sky. So basically we're seeing some crazy sky effects happening, and I tried to find a Titan. I couldn't, but Arekkz was able to hop on over, and let me see here. I'm doing live switching of B-roll, so I apologize for this.
Nice, all good.
I like the design, Arekkz. Nice.
Thank you, bro. It's got to be red and black, right? It's got to be. That's the one.
And then here's Arekkz's footage. He has footage of the Shaper Storm. So that's how it started. When did you record that, Arekkz?
So that was probably about 2 hours ago now. So like I saw like it kind of pop up on. There was the Anthem tweet that says something about like something's happening. And then if you log in game, there's actually the little news feed that pops up. It actually says like there's actually an actual called out event for it. It's called. It says like there's a storm brewing and giants roam the land. So went outside and then had a little kind of like look in the sky. But then as you roam around, there seems to be a fair amount of Titans spawning. Sometimes they're lesser ones, and sometimes you get the old ancient Titan.
So what do you guys think? What do you guys think about events like this? Do you think they're kind of interesting, or just a tease of what they can do? Do you think they're going to do something bigger than this? Because if we go back over to my footage from just a few hours later, it looks a lot darker than yours, Arekkz. Like it's ready to like basically explode.
True, yeah. I mean, there is that possibility. I mean, because I think there was a recent interview with Mark Darrow where he was kind of talking about cataclysms and how they liken them to kind of Fortnite map changes and Battlefield Tides of War and stuff. So there's the chance that they could do like a lot more with this. But I think it's one of those things where in the context of the demo, even if in the demo it is just more Titan spawning, if you take this and apply this to the full game, this could become like how they spawn world bosses. Imagine if there's like a crazy rare mob that we've never seen before, and suddenly you make a whole event over like what you have in MMOs where you normally find a random world boss. Imagine if they made like a storm event around it, where every time you see something in the sky, you're like, yo, something's happening. That could be really cool.
Yeah, I would like that a lot, and I'm kind of wondering if they can actually do world changes, like have the world change and such. Apparently, Mike Gamble's been teasing a little bit. It's a tease of what is to come in game. He did that about 10 minutes ago as of this recording, so I think we're going to see more this weekend. I'm really stoked.
Yeah, I hope so as well. But this also brings a possibility of situational events as well. So let's say it's Christmas, maybe the world starts snowing. And if you do pass the event, maybe you get event-based vinyls as rewards. I believe that was teased in one video I watched. I can't remember exactly now, but there was an interview with Mark Dara. I believe he mentioned that.
Yeah, real quick production note behind the scenes. If you're watching on YouTube or anything, we broadcast this to twitch.tv/the Destin channel every Sunday at 11 a.m. These gentlemen have been gracious enough to either stay up late or get up super early to be part of the show. So thank you to everybody who watches there. And it's available as a VOD if you miss it live immediately over there to all subscribers. And then one day later, everywhere. I open it up after that. And thank you to everybody who's been supporting the show. With this world event and this kind of gameplay mechanic that they're able to introduce with Anthem, let's talk about the question that was going to be the core conversation of this show, and that's, does a game like Anthem need PvP? We'll start there, and then we'll talk about how it could do PvP and be successful in that space. So first of all, does it need it? I'll say no, I don't think it necessarily does. We've seen games like Diablo do it, where you can just, it's a game where you play with your friends, you farm for loot, and it's a great time. But I don't necessarily think every game needs to have PvP in order to be successful. Monster Hunter, of course, was hugely successful, and it doesn't necessarily need it. Arekkz, what are your thoughts? I'd love to hear your opinion on this topic.
So I definitely think, like, a game like this, I don't really feel like it needs it. I can understand why people would sometimes bring the question up, and obviously because, in times where maybe if you've kind of got to the end game and you feel like you've done all the content, PvP is often something that can kind of keep people busy and sustain them. But I feel like a game like this, it's because when the second you start having PvP and you have, like, all the abilities you've got, suddenly you've got that really interesting question of, like, how do you balance this for PvP and for PvE? And then suddenly you get to the point where, a setup that we really like. I mean, just take, for example, the Colossus's, like, lightning coil flamethrower. I mean, I could just see that ripping through anybody and everybody in PvP.
Yeah.
So suddenly it's like, all right, do we balance this separately? Do we just nerf it all across the board? And then you get to the point where, like, I feel like it creates this kind of weird balance. And the way that you move around so much, the way that, it doesn't have lock on, for example. So, the way that you kind of, if you try to sort of imagine how you would fly in the sky and fight, I mean, how would it be if you've got like an interceptor dashing around a Colossus? Is it just going to be mad frustrating? So I couldn't personally see a way that I would enjoy PvP in this, at least like not in the conventional sense, not in like a kind of team deathmatch or like 2v2 or like 4v4 kind of thing.
Yep.
Totally. What about you, Dantics? What do you think?
I'm in the same boat. I just think it'd be much too hard to balance that and the fact that other games have kind of attempted it. I remember with Diablo 3, they promised a PvP servers at least when they were first releasing it. And then they looked at tuning all the skills and the damage numbers behind the scenes, and you're hitting for millions and millions and you don't have that level of health. And like Arekkz was saying, some skills just would be too hard to balance. If you think about the Storm's fire skills, for example, if you catch on fire in the game, you crash immediately to the ground because you overheat. So everyone would just run fireballs, wouldn't they? What about you, Destin? What do you think?
So let me blow your mind for a second. I think we keep thinking about traditional PvP, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are other ways that I could introduce a PvP mechanic where you're not necessarily facing off face-to-face against people, but maybe competing separately to clear waves of ads or something like that. Think Gambit in Destiny 2, right? Gambit works exceptionally well, and for the most part, it's still a PvP PvE mode, but you're not really fighting each other except for the invades. You're clearing waves of ads and depositing moats. I think a mechanic like that could be a really, really interesting gameplay PvP mode that would work really, really well in Anthem. And I'm sure BioWare can come up with something different from Gambit, so it's not just the same mode.
I actually had an idea around this. If you guys played Vermintide 2, it's basically like Left 4 Dead in that 4 people group up together, try to get through story-based content. At the end, they get rewards, loot, so on. There was a mode wherein you could attach it to your Twitch, and your viewers could vote when things come up on the screen and what happens. It could be spawning in bosses, it could be giving you health, it could be giving you weapons. It was always them spawning bosses on you, but it was a fun, cool, little neat idea. So I was thinking a game like this, you could have 2 teams head-to-head racing to the finish. And if you do certain things, it sends over enemies to the other team. If they do certain things, it does the same. And then you can kind of try to race to the end. And that could be a way you could do PvP.
That could be really interesting. But at the end of the day, does it need it? I'm going to go ahead and say, no, it absolutely doesn't. I think it has a lot of the base mechanics, and hopefully they improve some of that stuff later. But it has a lot of base mechanics that are interesting enough to keep people looped in for, I'd say, 40 to 80 hours. I don't know about Endgame though, and we could talk about that a little bit more. But what do you guys think about PvP? Does it need that to be successful? Arekkz?
No, I mean, I think definitely not. I think they've got kind of a great game there. I think, like, in a game like this, I would almost, obviously you'd have different teams, but I feel like if they were going to focus resources somewhere, I would rather they focus them on PvE and just build like a bigger experience for that. So I don't think it needs it, no.
Yeah. Dantics?
I agree, Arekkz. I think that if they're going to put resources somewhere, they should put it towards more content. Right now, to tune it to PvP, I think that's going to take a little too long. And I think it might not even be possible with this kind of game. I want it to be more like, your Mass Effect 3 multiplayer or your Dragon Age Inquisition multiplayer, which is what BioWare did before, wherein you just have a group of friends and you kind of co-op and you have fun. That's what I want.
Yeah, for me, I've been digging into a lot of builds and such lately in the game, just trying to find damage checks, and it gets me more and more excited about the end game personally. So for me, that's a really interesting, compelling thing. I don't know, Arekkz, it looks like you and I both did the muster point test and kind of came to the same conclusion that it's awesome.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, so we did this muster point thing, Arekkz and I separately, and we were hitting for almost 24K with the Devastator sniper rifle, and that was really, really fun for me. And then I looked at Dantics, your video, and Arekkz, I checked out your stuff, and some of the mods seem really, really interesting. Dado on the show last week brought up a particularly interesting one, Amulet of Winter, that increases ice damage by 5%. Token of the Master increases blast damage by 35%. Hitting an enemy with E increases Q damage by 60% for 5 seconds. So these sort of powers that feed into each other. Does that get you more excited about the end game, this min-maxing stuff? Because that's where I found the most fun with Anthem myself. Arekkz?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Because I mean, that's ultimately you know what keeps me playing games like this. But yeah, I mean, even down to like you look at what we've been doing in the open demo with very limited slots. You know, you've got 2 components, you've got all these things, and we're already trying to sort of stack these things. But then you look at how like all the bonus masterwork like texts. I mean, you know, I'm a Colossus fanboy, and seeing the flamethrower with the like the when you set something on fire, it does more damage. Like what? Like I can't wait to make a build with 6 like masterwork components and full on like legendary gear. Like that's going to be so finely tuned. It's going to be amazing.
That's going to be really, really fun. And Dantics, I noticed in your video of the new Stronghold, which we'll talk about in a second, you did a sort of like a rewind style thing where you called out some interesting things about the factions and such. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's going to play into like the gear game?
Oh, the factions itself? I'm not too sure, actually. I think the faction mechanic is actually going to work around getting legendary contracts. That's how I think you'll end up getting them. If it feeds into some kind of unique masterwork gear set would be absolutely amazing. But there is like that Champion of Tarsus ultimate kind of end game goal for your faction kind of rewards. And we don't know what that is yet. They haven't even talked about it. So that could very well be something to do with items or something to do with cosmetics. So yeah.
That would be really cool. What was some of the other interesting stuff that you noticed during your gameplay session? Because you have a ton of videos on your channel. Maybe just like, what was the most compelling thing to you that you got to experience?
The most compelling thing, wow. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think just the first time I really jumped in to feed back into what we're just talking about and had a look at some of the massive ways that Masterwork gear could change your gameplay. I got an item that was all about blast damage. It increased it by a large percentage, and trying that out was just you went from taking roughly 5 seconds to kill a basic mob to taking a second. It just huge improvement, and just min-maxing those single gear items when you can min-max 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items, is it?
If
Can you imagine 11 Masterworks? Yeah, can you imagine 11 Masterworks, each with their own unique effect, each with something that they bring that you can put together. Arekkz was talking about the flamethrower one. That's when you kill a mob, you get this large boost temporarily that can stack 5 times. So then you put that plus the one that increases the damage of that particular slot, and then it's increased by like 350%. So it's absolutely crazy. That's what I enjoyed the most personally.
Yeah, that kind of stuff's super cool. Arekkz, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, definitely the same as well. I think probably what excites me is seeing how that actually extends to the weapons. Because I think up until now, I think we all agree that like it's very much been, I mean, Anthem is an ability-led game, right? We said the other week it was abilities first, gun second. But I am interested to see, knowing that like these masterwork and legendary bonuses can sometimes change the way that it performs. I want to see how some of those weapons perhaps change, because right now, they're just pretty bog standard, right? You got some assault rifles, you got some snipers, but like, are we going to see some of those cool bonuses? For example, take the Interceptor. The Interceptor's Tempest Strike has a bonus where when you destroy it, you kick out a fire explosion. That's not default behavior for the Tempest Strike. So could we expect like a gun where like when you kill someone, then suddenly you kick out fire explosions, and then suddenly your weapons are becoming really cool. Yeah. So I think I'm probably, even though like abilities will always be the main thing, I'm almost kind of more excited to see how the weapons change.
Well, actually, now that you mention it, there was a live stream with the devs focusing around gear, and one of the weapons there, one of the masterwork weapons there, actually did set off an electric explosion when you
Oh
killed something.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So there
also
could be something cool.
I also unlocked during my endgame session, I unlocked a Defender Assault Rifle that increased the speed you could execute your abilities, and it gave you more shotgun ammo.
Ooh.
So that was really, really interesting to me. I'm like, oh, the weapons can also buff your stats, and that was a masterwork version of the gear. So yeah, it sounds like they are going to be leaning into that.
Also, there was just very quickly, there was one additional thing for the Interceptor, and I feel like this will make the perfect Devastator build. By triple dashing, you reload your gun. So just you could do Devastator shot, dash, and then just like, it's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be good with the SMGs because you run through that ammo real quick.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and it buffs you up by what was it, 50% weapon damage or something, or was it 10%? I can't remember exactly.
It's somewhere there, yeah.
For which one? The triple dashing or which class? Increases melee damage by 30% and electric by 30%. That's the Vanguard badge. I have a bunch of the stats written down to reference on the side here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some really, really interesting builds like that. I think next up, you guys got to experience Temple of the Scar. I got to watch you guys play it. We couldn't get in. We were having like a weird connectivity issue at our event because they put it all on one switch, so they had to switch it, and we missed out on this event. So I'm super happy you guys got to play it, and we're able to bring some footage today. We're gonna cut over to that really quick. Basically, this is the new Temple of the Scar mission. And Arekkz, we're looking at your B-roll. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your impressions of it? I have some thoughts too, but because I didn't play it, I want to hear from you guys first. So Arekkz, yeah, what did you think?
So I definitely this one kind of sort of to set the scene. I mean, this is one of the strongholds that you'll unlock at the end game. So the first one you'll unlock it much earlier, even though it's still technically speaking end game content.
Yeah.
That's the Tyrant Mine one. And whereas this one here, it definitely feels a lot more challenging, a lot more in depth. There's more components to it. While still fundamentally the first part, you're just working through waves of enemies. When you get to the boss fight at the end, that is definitely, there's more mechanics to it than just like the Tyrant Mine, which is just shoot the weak points and then when it runs away, kill some ads. So I feel like this is obviously only the second one, and we know from some of the interviews there's 3 at launch. So if they're stepping up like this, if you compare like this to Tyrant Mine, I'm interested to see what number 3 is going to be like. They are getting more complex.
Yeah, because
I enjoyed it.
Jumping right to the boss, you can kind of see you can do damage right away, but then it introduces a mechanic, and I actually really appreciated that. A, because this seems like it's going to be a great DPS check boss, because he's fairly stationary, and B, because it's not just a spider running around, because the spider is really hard because it's jumping all over the place, it's shooting webs at you, and it makes it a little bit tricky to do checks on it. But I really appreciated that this one introduced something else that you have to do. Dantics, you got to play it. You were a big fan of the event. I heard.
I was a massive fan, so much so that I died 3 times to the fans. So you can see right now that there is quite a large kind of tank-like robot boss in the middle, and you have 3 fans. How you take the shield down of the boss is that you destroy those 3 fans that pop up that are kind of shielding him. I didn't realize that when I was playing it because I was distracted by the photographers and the devs next to me. So I kept running into those fans and they kill you almost instantly. So there is a nice, interesting mechanic there wherein there's a lot of mobs spawning while the fans are going, and when the fans are down, you gotta just pile on the boss, and the boss freezes. The boss gets the acid effects and electricity and fire, and you can combo and you can do some nasty business. You can see it now in Arekkz's footage. It is a really fun boss fight because you really do get to see those numbers. So if you want to test out that Devastator sniper rifle, this is where you do it.
So, sort of a little bit of a crazy thing to say, but shout out to the designers who made the fans. I think they look really cool.
They do actually.
Yeah, blue is my favorite color, so I was like, oh man, they look really neat. I know that's a nerdy thing to say, but I thought it was interesting. The boss mechanics I really enjoy, and I think it's sort of cool how they're dealing with the Shaper relics, and they're manipulating them to kind of make something like this, and it kind of opens up a lot of the potential of what you can see here. But if we go back to the beginning of the fight, how do you guys feel about the setup? Because I really like that it was a tighter space. It was a little bit more claustrophobic. And Dantics, you sent me a clip also. It had commentary on it, so I went with the one that didn't have commentary. No hard
sorry.
Yeah. But in the commentary, you guys were talking about setting up your combos and stuff, and I'm like, yes, like that's the kind of gameplay. But what did you think about that intro section? Did you get the same impression I did?
Yeah, so you can see now there's 2 turrets kind of on the screen. We did this through twice. The first time we kind of had to stop because we dropped out and we started doing some interviews. But the second time, you could hear over the voice because we were voice comms and we accidentally recorded all that. That's sorry about that. But you can hear one of the members of our team said, hey, let's take the right turret. And everyone's like, all right. We immediately stopped what we did, ran to the right turret, and we piled on. And what took, like maybe 5 minutes before just took a few seconds. So there's a massive difference with how you approach these fights in these strongholds when you are coordinated. And because it's so claustrophobic, it's almost forcing you to take the high ground, Anakin, almost. Like, there's a few times where it's like, we have to go above. Yeah.
I just watched those movies, sorry.
Yeah. I don't think they're as bad as everyone says, just maybe the second. But if you do split up and take things individually, it takes a lot longer. So you do have to coordinate, take the snipers out, take the turrets out, and take those high ground spots, like get up high, park yourself, and don't just walk straight ahead. Anyway.
Yeah. For me, it's interesting. One thing people are definitely going to be concerned about is repetitiveness. We've seen 2 of the strongholds. We have 1 more to be revealed. Are you guys concerned about that at all? I am a little bit, to be honest, because if we've seen 2, and I've already run Tyrant Mine 900 times doing these DPS checks, but I'm a crazy person. Most people aren't going to play that way. And then on Grandmaster, it's going to change it up a little bit. So I'm a little hopeful that those harder difficulties, which I did get to play on Grandmaster difficulty, they introduce some sort of new mechanics and not just higher shields. What do you guys think? Do you think this is going to kind of burn people out really quick, only having the 3 strongholds? Arekkz, we can start with you.
So I mean, it's definitely a fair thing to say. It is kind of like a concern, because if you run through 2 of them, already, or at least I've had a chance to play through 2 of them already. Then, and if that's one of the pillars of your end game, then I've kind of essentially experienced 2/3 of it. They have obviously said in previous live streams that that strongholds are things that they would like to add, in future. So I imagine it's something that they can continue to add. And I think it's one of those things where, like, I completely get wanting the game to have everything you want right at the start, but I've played so many of these like MMO light type games that you kind of expect the game. You are buying into a game as a service, right? The game is not going to be the game is not going to be the whole experience at launch, and it will continue to grow. So I feel like with everything that there is now, factoring in like the min maxing that I want to do and all the builds and stuff, I think there's going to be plenty to keep me busy for quite a while. I mean, there will probably come that time where everyone rushes through it and they do hit that point where they're like, all right, what's next? But pair that with the fact that BioWare have been communicating so much, I feel like shortly after launch, maybe they'll start talking about what they want to do next, and then it might just be a case of they'll give us like a calendar and we kind of just have things to look forward to. So yeah, it is marginally concerning, but I guess it all depends on what everything else feels like once we play at Endgame, right?
Definitely. I thought it would be boring initially. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go in and do Tyrant Mine because that's all I can really run. But then I started realizing something. I've mostly only been running Ranger, and I've gotten most of the mods for Colossus, but all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, I'm still on that grind to get the final stuff to test out builds with my Colossus that I don't have yet. I haven't run Interceptor too much, so I have basically nothing on that character, and I still need to build him up. And then you have your Storm build. And you know what the best part about it all is? You don't have to run through multiple times, like through the campaign and everything, like it would with other properties. I'm not going to say the name. Everybody knows what I'm referencing, though. And I think that's one of the strengths there. Dantics, what about you? Do you have any concerns about that repetitive feel?
Yeah, look, I've been playing with a group of friends, and they got to the stage where they were over it. I wasn't. I wasn't personally over it, but they got to the stage where they'd seen everything they needed to see. And that does concern me a little bit, since there is only 2/3 more strongholds. But we didn't get a chance to play any legendary contracts. Now, I can see a few people in the chat asking about them, and they're basically like end game short form missions that are randomized. So you'll have 3 parts in a legendary contract. Each kind of objective is different each time with different enemies or different things you need to collect. So that will keep it sort of fresh in a way. If all you want to do is a quick mission, get quick rewards, you do get those masterworks, you do get those legendaries at high difficulties. If you don't want to run a full, like I don't want to say raid, but let's just say 4-man small short form raid. If you don't want to run one of those, then you can run the legendary contracts.
I'm not going to say raid, but let's say raid.
Let's say raid. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Because there's not going to, let's be honest, I don't think they're ever going to do an actual like 30-man raid or anything like that. So yeah, I'm concerned with the amount of content it actually has, but what game that you know of started with a lot, game like this started with a lot of like end game content at the start. So by the time we get through the story, I think they're probably going to have added at least something else. Well, hoping they will.
I think a lot of people are forgetting that there's a campaign that we don't know how long it is. There's a ton of lore. I just realized that I hadn't gone through like the codex to read all that stuff and learn more about the world of Anthem. And guess what? Yep. That's in game, which is absolutely excellent. So I can be in that world, and if my teammates need time to get ready, I'll be like, oh, I haven't read whatever about this character or about the world or the setting of Fort Tarsis or what's going on in free play. Like why is there an Ash Titan out there running around? And yeah. And if they keep doing events like this thing, this is definitely the start, the thing that we're seeing today. And we recorded 11 on Sunday. So, of course, we might have a really, really exciting topic for next week, or we'll have some feedback about it being a little bit of a letdown. But I don't know, like looking at that gameplay footage from earlier, that has me really, really excited, thinking that they're building towards something. And they can do stuff like this on a regular basis. They're set up to do this for their community, and I think that's incredibly, incredibly cool.
Yeah, I think also like it's worth adding to that as well. I mean, I think the interesting thing is it's gonna fit. It's gonna fit quite interesting space for a lot of people. Is that if you look at like the end game map, it's basically trying to sort of give people options because you've got you're gonna have your strongholds, you're gonna have your legendary contracts. We've also like people. I guess we haven't kind of touched on them too much, but if you go down in the basement of Fort Tarsis, there's the daily, weekly, and monthly trials. They're just like little challenges you can do, but they're things you can work towards, and they give you rewards as well. And obviously, crafting in itself could also be a pursuit. I mean, if you've got some gear you really like, and that's obviously how you get inscriptions, you're going to be going out, you're going to be farming materials, looking for things, so you can then basically continue crafting as well. So that'll form part of it. But I also think it'll get to that point where it'll actually fit quite nicely in like a lot of people's kind of schedule, so to speak, because it won't be so much content that it'll be overwhelming. Where you look around, you're like, I think back to when I used to play World of Warcraft. It's like, what do I do today? Because there's like a bajillion things. Whereas it'll be like, you know what? I get to Endgame, I've completed the campaign, I've done everything, I've got like a min-max build. I'll be like, all right, let me log in today, check my contracts, do a couple of the daily trials, make sure I've checked that off, make sure my weeklies are done, run a stronghold, and then you come back tomorrow. It's like, I use kind of Monster Hunter as the comparison point. It's like there's two groups of people. There's people that are like, they play Monster Hunter for thousands of hours and they play it every day. Versus there are some people that kind of, they were new to Monster Hunter with World. They got their 100, 200 hours out of it. And then they check back every time new content is added. So there'll be different kind of people. There'll be ways people kind of experience the game in different ways. And I think I'm personally still like knowing what the end game is going to be. I'm personally still excited. It hasn't faltered my excitement. So
yeah, definitely. So I did get to play on Elder Game Grandmaster 1 difficulty. That was really, really exciting for me because we heard the complaint that, Anthem looks really, really easy. And as we've learned this weekend, that's just not true. And then getting to play on Grandmaster difficulty, that is definitely not true. It is actually incredibly challenging to play on that difficulty level, and you have to be working together as a team. The other thing that I noticed about Endgame, and one of the reasons I was sort of concerned, was because it is sort of similar in that you get the same pieces of gear, but they have interesting perks on them. So it's going to be a lot of learning about how to make your builds, and that's sort of what I've been working on by doing these sort of dumb broken builds of gameplay and just trying to figure out like how much DPS can I get out of these characters early in the game, because there's probably going to be an applicable gear set to late game. And that's the only reason I worry about sort of the repetitiveness of Endgame. But without a good team, it's not going to work. So I wonder how the solo player's experience is going to be with this content. Do you guys think there's going to be an avenue for them, Arekkz?
I think definitely, like, at least running through the campaign, no questions asked. I mean, because I've been to a few different events, I've been hands-on with things at different times, and a lot of the time, because I've been recording, I've just jumped into things solo just so I can kind of do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And obviously, you have different difficulties. So if you got someone that's coming in and is like, I just want to experience the campaign, I'm more of like a BioWare fan for story, then you could even, if you don't really want the challenge, you can just run it on easy or normal and just run through. But obviously, if you want that challenge and that loot, then you can run it on hard. I think when it comes to like running through like the campaign, no problems at all. There'll definitely be stuff for solo players. You can run as a free play, and then obviously when you do start jumping into things like strongholds, you can't go in solo. It force matchmake, so you are put with teams. And I think at least when it comes to like the hard difficulty, it's fine. As you said, definitely. Like I had a chance to run a few Grandmaster things as well. Like when you get to Grandmaster, you are going to need to communicate. So I suppose it depends on what the solo player kind of wants out of it. But I definitely think it's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there will be something there. Dantics, you agree?
Yeah, look, you could see in my last video, I did a comparison between Grandmaster 1 and Hard, where I was attacking a turret with the Interceptor, just meleeing. And it took, I think, a minute or so. I had to speed it up just to take on that turret alone. But in Hard, when you have your team there, it was a couple of seconds. So there is this huge disparity. And the reason for that is they want you to combo, and they want you to have the right skills that work together, and they want you to coordinate. So when you do that, the turret wasn't as difficult. It very clearly wasn't. And I was talking to the devs, and they said, yeah, look, late game, you're going to need someone that's good at priming, you're going to need someone that's good at detonating, you're going to need someone that can take down shields. And for those who don't know, shields are taken down with electric and ice damage. So if you have that arc lightning spell, that's particularly strong against shields. You notice it just absolutely melts them because it doesn't prime, doesn't detonate, so it has a high base damage.
Okay.
And then it has that electric damage as well. So there's going to be one person that needs to have a way to take down shields, because then the other person can prime, and then the other person can detonate, and then you have to coordinate all of this together. And when you do, you'll be able to take on Grandmaster 1. But if you don't, it is like you're going to struggle. Let's just say that.
Definitely. One of the things, I'm playing the B-roll of some of the builds, and Arekkz, I finally got Lightning Coil and Flamethrower. That build is so fun.
It's amazing, right?
On the Colossus. But two builds that aren't so great right now, and they did comment on this, but our Spark Dash isn't working correctly on the Interceptor, and that really, really sucks, because I was having a little bit of fun with it. Like, you kind of dash in, and then it's a detonator, I believe. And you know what really bugs me? This is just like nitpicking a little bit, but there's an ability that's literally called Detonator on the Interceptor. Yeah. That's a primer. What the hell,
by the exact same thing, man. He's like, why is it called Detonator when it doesn't detonate?
Yeah. Yeah. Use this Detonator ability that doesn't detonate anything. Yeah, that drove me nuts. But yeah, for me, the least compelling has been Interceptor, and Storm is really good, but the base build of the Storm right now is actually like one of the strongest.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Have you guys encountered anything else with the Storm or the Interceptor in particular that has been really, really interesting to you?
Well, I have encountered just a pure no prime and no detonator build where I used that flame burst ability and the arc lightning, and then one of my teammates had like a frost build, and then another one was a Colossus with all the detonator abilities.
Yeah.
And that worked really, really well, because I would take down those shields of the Scar Hunters and the Scouts, the snipers, really quickly. And what used to be something quite difficult to do became something pretty simple, because it would just be bam, shields gone, fall out of the sky, prime, detonate, gone, dead. That's it.
Yeah.
If we worked together. When we didn't, it was kind of chaos. But.
It was rough. So that's definitely that team dynamic. What about you, Arekkz? I'm looking at Storm footage right now. I'm using ice shards and then that flame throw, which I felt like the ice shards were okay, but that flame takes you have to charge it up all the way to get that combo hit. And I feel like you're almost coming in at the end of your timeline to throw it.
So it's funny you say that, because that's actually one of the more powerful Storm builds that we had a chance to like test out. That's when we did the video on the other day. That's like, I know what you mean. The default one you start with is pretty good, but from our tests we had, like we probably had most success with that one. So like Ice Storm paired with the flame, because although you've got that setup time, like the damage from it is really strong, that fireball. So it's like, I guess one of those like high commit things. So definitely, I'd say yeah. For Storm, that was kind of the one that like our team were running. Definitely Ice Storm and Flaming Orb, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think for Interceptor, our kind of go-to was still Venom Bomb and Tempest Strike, just because you prime everything in a group, and then obviously you can Tempest Strike from the sky, so you just do a drop kick on everything, and then you kind of just run through with that. But I think this time, this past weekend, my focus was definitely more so on Ranger, because I think the one thing that I've sort of come to the conclusion with the Ranger is that like it's still one of my favorite javelins. But when you're trying to sort of think of build ideas for it, the Colossus and the Storm look flashy, as does the Interceptor, whereas the Ranger builds, they're like super high damage, but they just don't look that flashy. So
that's what I was saying 2 weeks ago, huh?
yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, and the ones that we the one that we run with a lot of the time was the Ice Grenade and then Pulse Beam. Because I sort of wrote that off at first, but Pulse Beam's actually really good because you can crit with it.
Wait, the Pulse Blast Detonator, you mean? I think it's Pulse Blast or Pulse Beam. Because there's also Spark. There's Spark Beam also, which is neither. It's just a high DPS one.
Yeah.
And I found that Spark Beam, which is actually a fire type, tears through shields, and I'm like,
really?
I don't know that it's supposed to tear through shields, but it does. Lightning's supposed to do more of that damage, right? Did you guys encounter that, or am I crazy?
You're not crazy. I think it's just because it's got high damage.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. It just rips through them.
It's really fun. I also did a stupid Ranger build. We're seeing it right now where we all used Spark Beam and tried to dips the boss.
I saw that. I was laughing at earlier. It was brilliant. It's like,
yeah. So we all sort of timed out our Spark Beam. That's not a build. Don't do that. So we did the high DPS builds, and we also did some stupid stuff. So, yeah.
That's
but I like that loadout. I'll have to try that. Your point on the Ranger, I actually really love the Ranger class. I think it's the coolest looking, in my opinion. I think it's the coolest looking because you can make it look like Iron Man. And Dantics, I was looking at some of your color schemes, and I'm like, oh, the Iron Man 2 armor set. Nice. I might have to mess with
you noticed that, huh?
Yeah, that was awesome. And so I'm liking the Ranger a lot, but he's a single target damage type character, right? So you have to play him in a really, really unique way. And do you think there's going to be a loadout of your team where each of the javelins play a part, or do you think people are going to lean into like sort of the DPS strategies that we did? Arekkz, like, so when I started thinking about it, I'm like, right now in the demo, and I know not everything's unlocked, is there necessarily going to be a need for like the Colossus? Like, what will the Colossus do besides pull everybody towards him? Like, he could group everybody up for big detonators, but I was just trying to think of good builds that utilize all 4 javelins in the squad. What do you think?
I think, I think the way that I've sort of summarized it is like, especially if you look towards endgame content, like the Colossus is going to be the best one when it comes to clearing trash mobs. Like it'll be like your ad clearer, right? Like I don't feel like a lot of, some of the builds didn't necessarily seem to be as potent on boss damage, but when it comes to just like when you will invariably have the ad phase, like Colossus will be your guy. So the thing that we found this weekend, and I hope I'm wrong with it, but the thing we sort of found this weekend is I feel like end game, the one that we seem to think has the least value is probably the Interceptor. We can see a place for the Storm because it spreads the AoE and it's powerful. It's just like a load of damaging elemental abilities. 100% a place for the Ranger for that high single target damage. I feel like the Ranger will be the boss nuker. Colossus just for that sheer, trash ball clearing. But then the Interceptor is trying to sort of like work out where it fits in because, for example, when it gets an aura, you think, okay, it can spread the effect. It's like, yeah, but then get a Storm and just throw down a combo and it's just spread it for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there trying to think like, what role does an Interceptor actually fill?
Well, I found that when we set our Interceptor off to go take out the snipers and the turrets, like to focus them down, because when you tie up the scouts, they can't fire, they have to melee. So if you send him in and just tie them all up, I think that's kind of what he does. He just kind of like takes out those real high priority targets. But if that's good late game, I'm not sure. Like you were saying, Arekkz, I don't know. Maybe a Ranger could do that as well. So.
Yeah, because it has target right now, but we also have muster point, which is more of a mobile version of that. It only does 20% versus 33%. And then sudden death strike was one of the interesting perks I found on Daddle's video. I kind of like combed the internet and wrote down a bunch of stats. Hitting an enemy detonates a fire explosion. So if it's just a masterwork that has by default, or maybe that was from your video, Arekkz, I don't remember. But if it just has that by default, that's really, really interesting to me. And
Yeah.
the only thing you're losing by not having an Interceptor is that 33% damage buff with Target Beacon, right? So you got to wonder, do you want your ag clear ability with the Storm and then the buffs from the Ranger and Colossus? Colossus doesn't have a damage buff though, right? For the team.
No, I mean, no, I don't think so. It was kind of, the description initially made it sound like when you aggro things, they were supposed to kind of take more damage, but I don't think they actually do. I think it's just like an aggro. But it's difficult because it's a very valid point. Like that 33% is nothing to be laughed at, especially that's how we got our number. That's how we got the big sniper number. But it's like, is that going to be enough to like, can they for the rest of the fight bring enough value to warrant that?
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't mean to say Interceptor is still a good class, but it's just definitely one of those things where this weekend when we've been running like Tyrant Mine back to back, we've had very defined roles for the other ones, and like our teammate that's been running Interceptor's been like, I really want to know like what my value is aside from just boosting damage when it comes to the boss phase.
Yeah. I think the Tyrant was an interesting boss though, in that you couldn't really hit their weak points with melee. Wherein, with the Scar Temple, with that boss, I can't remember his name now, you can actually hit those weak point legs while you melee. So I found the Interceptor was more useful in that than it was in the Tyrant Mine. So I mean, he could very well have roles in other runs, but yeah, like you were saying, that target beacon is like a third extra damage for everyone, and I think the muster point is only for weapon damage. It's not for abilities. So
yeah, it's weapons only.
True.
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually very true.
Yeah.
So the super on the Interceptor also could be a good res mechanic.
Very true. Yeah.
Pop my super. Team's down. All right, I'll pop my super. Do. Use it to res and then get a little DPS on somebody. There's also some interesting. See, I got it right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's also some elemental status clears. Real quick. This is the point of the show where we would normally do an outro, but we're going to transition right into questions. If you're watching over on twitch.tv/the Destin channel, we take live questions every Sunday for a little bit. So if you guys have anything you want to talk about or hear us talk about on Anthem the game, post it there. And then, we will discuss, while I'm collecting those questions, something Dantics wanted to bring up on the show, and that is, what areas of improvement should the Anthem devs be hearing right now? For me, the UI is fairly cluttered. I feel like there's a better way to present that data somehow, but I'm not a designer. What about you, Dantics?
Well, I was a designer for UI especially. So not that plays any relevance in video games, but me and my friends and a lot of people on my Discord have stated that it's very difficult, initially at least, to navigate the matchmaking screen. Like sometimes you jump out of it accidentally. Sometimes you're all not on the same kind of mission, or you don't know which mission to press. And then there's the end screen UI, wherein you can't see your damage numbers. You can't see what the medals are specifically. You can't really see what the point of that screen is unless you kind of get more information. So that's something I really want them to work on. I want to see what that medal was, how many kills I actually got, how many resources I actually harvested, how many people I actually resurrected. And I want to compare it to my friends, because frankly, co-op is still a bit of a competition, I still want to be like, I got more medals than
leaderboards, DPS numbers, who did the most things, definitely. That would be totally excellent. What about you, Arekkz?
Yeah. I think for me, like, I'd like to sort of see on the free play front, like two couple of things. One, please can I have a waypointer. Like that would be really useful.
Yeah.
Especially today when I was flying around trying to find the storm, and like I'm really bad with directions. So like I normally rely on waypointers in every game ever. But also another thing, I would actually quite like it if how like when you're roaming around the free roam, you have, when you get near a world event, obviously you get the icon. But I'd always like it if you actually had countdowns for world events on the map, because I think free play is such a great thing, but a lot of the time I drop into it. Like this weekend, I was flying around and I was like, why would I because you have to fly aimlessly to try and find something. I would rather just go into something and fly to something. And I appreciate some people do just like to explore randomly. And for example, if you're out there looking for crafting materials, maybe you would. But I feel like if I could go out and be like, okay, cool, there's something happening in the north, let me go there. It'll help me. It'll give me more incentive to actually dive into free play. So I'd like to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There actually is in the full game. I'm not sure if you guys had it when you played your build, but there was like a team widget which kind of showed the exact direction and distance away from your teammates, and that kind of thing really helped. And if they had that kind of thing for world events as well, that would be that would be really cool.
Mm-mm.
Two more things. You need to be able to do something else when you're down. Let us play a mini game. Make a mini game with that giant red orb in the middle of the screen. Like, let us play Pong or something. Just so we're like
the Google dinosaur.
Yeah. Or like open up a browser and be like, "Do you want to watch a video online while you wait?" I don't know. Yeah. And
emote. That would be really cool if there was like a downed emote.
Help.
Help.
Customizable downed emotes. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
What else was I gonna say? I really think that they need to have loot drops that say what you got, like they did when they revealed it at E3. And I know that's a little bit of a topic that people disagree on. I think it absolutely needs to be there. You need those reaction moments. And already, like, if I got the drop I needed for my Colossus, I would be stoked. But I'm not going to have that reaction until I'm on this Endgame screen where I'm kind of scrolling through and I'm like, oh, is that the icon of the thing I need? Oh, yeah, it is. Cool. Yay. And then you go equip it and then you go try it. What do you guys think? Do you think that would be beneficial?
Look, I completely agree with you, Destin. I think the reason they don't have that right now is because they don't want people to stop what they're doing and look at their items and filter through them and put new ones on. So I'm not for the putting new ones on and not looking at your items, but when you do pick up something like a masterwork or legendary, it 100% should pop up on the screen and be like, this is what you got. There should be like an open animation, at least in the corner, and be like, you got
Avengers
Wrath
boom.
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Avengers boom.
Yeah.
They 100% should be, and that in itself stops you, grinding too much because you don't know if you've got it or not. So you have to jump out every 5 minutes and make sure you haven't got the item that you want. So yeah, I would like to see it.
Yeah, here's a question from chat. We're going to go right into that. Now, Glacius wants to know, do you know if aspects of the game will have difficulty options? I think he means all aspects. And if so, won't matchmaking be very difficult once you reach the Grandmaster difficulty settings? I think that's a good point. What do you guys think? Is it going to have that across the board?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So every activity you do, missions, contracts, free play, strongholds, anything you can physically load into from the menu, you can choose difficulty for. So it means that ultimately you can kind of and because increasing the difficulty means you get better chance at better loot, then ultimately you can kind of pick what you want to play and farm that. On the matchmaking front, it's an interesting point. I suppose, if you're, but I think it's fair to say there'll be enough of the player base. You kind of have your split player base, right? You'll have people that will play it slightly more casually. They'll probably, kind of hang around like normal and hard difficulties and just run through content. And then you have like your min maxers who will be pushing Grandmasters 1, 2, and 3. So I don't think there'll be too much difficulty when it comes to trying to matchmake. I suppose maybe the discrepancy might be like, how thinly are people going to be spread between 1, 2, and 3? Would it have been easier just to have had like a Grandmaster? I guess we won't know. I guess it kind of sort of depends how people stick with it.
Definitely. Next question. Are there going to be javelin specific components for each weapon or only certain weapons for certain javelins? The weapons are javelin wide, the weapon specifically, but each of the components are different per javelin. So you can't like do spark dash on a ranger, for example. That's specific to the interceptor class. Pick up sticks. Do you guys think they should allow you to show your loot drops? We talked about that. Sorry, I should probably read these before I just say them out loud. Here we go. Here's one about PvP, one of our topics on the show. Do you think PvP, if implemented in a Borderlands style but with matchmaking, would be better than PvP that most people instinctively think of? Arekkz?
Can you remind me what Borderlands style PvP is? It's been a long time since I played that. I didn't even know Borderlands had. Oh, you mean where you duel people?
Yeah.
The Coliseum kind of thing.
Oh, I mean that would probably be all right because that, I mean, with the kind of discussion we had before about the reason we didn't necessarily want dedicated PvP is because sometimes it skews the balancing. But I suppose if you have one of those ones where you're like, we don't care about balance, but you can just duel your friend and you can fire rockets at each other, and then when you lose, you just go back into free play. I mean, I'd be completely cool with that.
Yeah, I'd be cool with that too. And I mean, they could put like achievements behind it or maybe a vinyl behind it, but it won't be necessary. Yeah, then it'd be all right. I'd be okay with it because then you don't need to balance it really. You could just throw crazy damage numbers and have YouTube clips up there of you like critting your friends for a million with a Devastator, and that would be hilarious.
Get my Colossus ult ready and just fire cannons at people.
That'd be pretty fun. Once we get to the end game, this one's from Mickey Chur. Once we get into end game and in a high difficulty level, I'm assuming we're going to have to focus specific targets, yes, to burn those big boys down. How about a way to mark enemies? What would you think about that, especially with VoIP? I think that would be really, really great. Like we kind of have a status effect, but some sort of emote or something to say, let's dips now. And a general piece of feedback just for me, please figure out how to do text chat. Please figure out how to do text chat. I've heard it's a legal thing. I don't care. It's a quality of life thing.
Yeah.
If Destiny figured it out, people are like, oh no, it just happened in February. Any game after February can't have it.
Well, it's, like you were saying, it was a legal thing. And I think if they add text to talk and talk to text, they're completely fine. So that's all they need to do. Just add that, then they can put in the text chat.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You hear that, BioWare? Just add that. Just add that extremely complex thing to add to your game. It's so simple.
That's not how the internet works. You say what you want. Doesn't matter how complicated it is.
Right.
Press the button. Press the button to make it happen.
Any other thoughts of things that they need to improve? I think the stun lock thing that I brought up last week is still sort of a mechanic that they could refine. But I want to open it up to you guys. Is there anything else that you think they need to tweak with Anthem?
Look, that's a hard one. For me, it's mostly just make sure it's polished. Make sure it's polished. Because I don't think, especially with the position EA BioWare is in, I don't think people are going to be very forgiving when it is released. So I want it to be, no enemies fading out and none of that stuff, and the servers to be relatively stable. And I think if they nail that, then everything else will fall into place. The stun lock thing, is annoying and little things like that. But what do you think, Arekkz?
Yeah, I mean, similar sort of thing, to be honest, because it's one of those things. Like, I always sit down and try to think to my best ability of like everything I want to sort of change. But ultimately, like, irrespective of some of the issues this weekend, like, I've still been having so much fun. Like, I've spent this is now I guess what, a 3-day demo each time. So it's the 6th day playing the exact same content, running Tyrant Mine back to back, and I'm still enjoying it. I mean, I am getting to the point where I'm like, I kind of really want the game to be out now so I can keep all this stuff and like the stuff that I'm working towards. But I mean, I've genuinely been having so much fun. So like the core foundation is fantastic. The moment to moment gameplay is so much fun. So I think the main thing for me will just be, make sure it's like, polish off all those things. And then hopefully I want to make sure that they maintain their communication they've been doing up until launch, which I imagine they definitely will do.
Yeah.
And hopefully very soon after launch, we get to know about their post-launch plans, because I think even if it does come out, and I think even if it comes out and people are like, 3 strongholds isn't enough, I'm going to blow through that quickly. If they very soon after say, hey, it's fine, because in 3 weeks' time, this is dropping. In 6 weeks' time, this is dropping. I'll be like, you know what? That's cool. Put it in my calendar. I'm going to chill. I'm going to go and grind some gear, and I'll be ready.
A roadmap.
That's literally it.
A roadmap. Yeah. That's what we need. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's all we have time for questions. Just so everybody knows, I have heard people asking about an audio version of this show. It's something I need to look into. There's services like Libsyn and such that I could pay that distributes to a wide variety of platforms. But I'm looking into it. It's just, I work full-time at IGN, and then I do this on the weekend for fun. So, I definitely appreciate all the questions. But, that's all I have for this week. Is there anything else you guys wanted to let people know about? Arekkz, where can people find you? How about that?
That works. They can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Arekkz, ArexG, and on Twitter, twitter.com/Arekkz.
And Dantics?
You can find me on youtube.com/Dantics, and you can find me on Twitter @/DanticsOfficial.
All right. And I'm Destin. You're probably watching this live right now on one of my channels, twitch.tv/the Destin channel or youtube.com/the Destin channel. Just a reminder, we do this live at 11 o'clock, and then it's available to subscribers immediately, and then 1 day later, it's available to everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching, showing your support and your love. But for now, until next time, everybody, freelancers, it's time to get back to work. See you again soon.